Get ready, because the news cycle never sleeps and neither do we. Welcome back to Google Trends Hub, your ultimate source for the fast-moving stories that shape our world. We're diving deep into the latest developments that have everyone talking, bringing you the inside scoop before anyone else. From landmark legal decisions that could redefine tech giants to critical shifts in how we access information, this is the place to be for unmissable updates. Don't blink, or you might just miss the next big thing. We've got a packed show for you today, so buckle up and let's get straight into the action. First up, a major antitrust battle has reached a pivotal moment, with a federal judge handing down a ruling that could have reshaped a tech titan's future. We'll break down exactly what this means for one of the world's most dominant online platforms and its iconic web browser. Then, we pivot to a different kind of digital landscape, exploring how a significant tech company is navigating new regulations and consumer demands. This story unpacks how a beloved browser's fate was decided in a high-stakes courtroom drama. Next, we're looking at the intricate web of partnerships and payments that keep the digital world running. Discover how a landmark legal decision is set to alter the dynamics between major tech players and their influential distribution channels. And finally, we examine a crucial legal outcome that could have far-reaching implications for competition in the digital age. This ruling addresses not only existing market dominance, but also the emerging frontier of artificial intelligence. Stick around, because you won't want to miss a single second of this. Make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to Google Trends Hub, and hit the notification bell so you're always in the know. A landmark verdict declared. In a decision that sent ripples through the tech industry, a U.S. federal judge has ruled against the government's drastic proposal to force Google to sell its Chrome web browser. This pivotal moment came after a lengthy antitrust case, where the government had sought to break up the tech giant's dominance in online search. While the demand for divesting Chrome was rejected, the judge imposed significant requirements aimed at fostering competition in the search market, marking a complex outcome for all parties involved. The core of the government's case revolved around Google's alleged illegal monopolistic practices in online search, particularly its lucrative distribution agreements with major players like Apple, Samsung, and other smartphone manufacturers. These deals, worth billions annually, ensure Google remains the default search engine on a vast array of devices, including iPhones. The government argued that this default status, facilitated by massive payments to partners like Apple, was a critical component of Google's search monopoly, effectively insulating it from competitive pressures. The judge, in a prior ruling, had indeed found Google's practices to be anti-competitive. However, when it came to remedies, the judge expressed strong reservations about the feasibility and impact of a Chrome divestiture. The ruling stated that such a move would be incredibly messy and highly risky, and that the government's request for this specific remedy constituted an overreach. The judge acknowledged that while Google's default status was instrumental in its market power, an outright ban on these distribution deals could have disproportionately negative effects on numerous businesses and consumers who rely on these arrangements. The court recognized that cutting off these substantial payments would likely impose crippling downstream harms on distribution partners. Instead of a browser sale, the judge mandated a series of behavioral remedies. Google is now required to make its search index data and user interaction information available to qualified competitors. This move is intended to empower rivals to enhance their own services and algorithms. Furthermore, Google must offer search result syndication services to competitors for a period of up to 5 years, allowing them to leverage Google's search infrastructure. Notably, the ruling also extends its reach to the burgeoning field of generative AI, imposing restrictions to prevent Google from using exclusive deals to dominate emerging AI markets, mirroring its past strategies in traditional search. The implications of this ruling are substantial. While Google retains its browser, the new requirements for data sharing and syndication services signal a significant shift in how competition will operate in the search landscape. The ruling also sets a precedent for regulating market dominance in the face of rapidly evolving technologies like AI. the parties have been given a deadline to submit a revised final judgment, and the remedies are set to take effect within 60 days of that finalization. This case, alongside another ongoing antitrust action against Google's ad tech business, underscores a broader governmental effort to address big tech's market power. But what does this mean for the everyday user, and how are industry insiders reacting to this complex legal tightrope walk? We'll explore the immediate fallout and the long-term predictions for the digital search ecosystem, before diving into the next major tech development shaping our connected lives. Browser freedom secured. In a significant victory for Google in the high-stakes antitrust case brought by the U.S. Department of Justice, a federal judge has ruled that the tech giant will not be forced to divest its market-leading Chrome browser. This decision avoids the most severe potential penalties for Google, with the court opting for a narrower set of behavioral remedies rather than a structural breakup. The ruling mandates changes to Google's search distribution practices and data sharing, but allows the company to retain ownership of Chrome. The Department of Justice had argued that Google's dominance in the Chrome browser was a key enabler of its alleged illegal monopoly in online search. They contended that Chrome acted as a critical gateway for users, funneling a significant portion of Internet activity through Google's search engine. The DOJ's proposed remedies were ambitious, including the divestiture of Chrome, a potential spin-off of Android-mandated sharing of search technology, and severe restrictions on distribution deals. Google, on the other hand, argued that no other entity could operate Chrome and Chromium as effectively as it does, and maintained that its use of Chrome as a vehicle for search was not inherently illegal. Judge Amit Mehta's ruling acknowledged Google's monopolistic behavior in maintaining its search dominance, but found that the government overreached in seeking forced divestiture of these key assets. The court determined that Google's use of Chrome to promote its search services, while significant, did not constitute an illegal restraint on its own. Consequently, the judge opted for a less drastic approach than the government had pushed for. While Google dodged the Chrome breakup, the ruling does impose notable changes. Google will still be allowed to continue its lucrative multi-billion-dollar payment arrangements for search placement with partners like Apple and Mozilla. However, a critical shift is that Google can no longer make access to its services, such as the Play Store, contingent on bundling its other applications like Search, Chrome, Google Assistant, or Gemini on devices. This means that manufacturers cannot be forced to pre-install Google's suite of apps simply to gain access to essential platforms like the Google Play Store. This change aims to open up the market for competing services and applications. The court's decision also requires Google to release certain search data to competitors and limits its ability to enter into exclusive distribution agreements that stifle competition. These behavioral remedies are designed to create a more level playing field in the online search market. While Google has stated it will appeal aspects of the decision, particularly regarding data sharing, which it claims could expose trade secrets, the immediate outcome is that Chrome remains under Google's control. This ruling represents a significant, albeit partial, victory for Google, allowing it to maintain its core assets while adapting to new regulatory requirements. This outcome reshapes the landscape for major tech players. But what does it truly mean for the companies that rely on these lucrative partnerships? We'll delve into the specific implications for entities like Apple and Mozilla before shifting our focus to another crucial legal development impacting the digital advertising world. Partnerships realigned in landmark ruling. In a decision that has significant implications for the digital ecosystem, a federal judge has issued remedies in Google's major antitrust trial, altering the landscape of default search agreements. While Google lost the core antitrust case, the judge's ruling on remedies has been viewed as a substantial win for Google, Apple, and Mozilla, largely avoiding the most stringent demands from the government. The key takeaway is that, while Google's exclusive deals ensuring its default search placement are ending, the substantial payments to partners like Apple and Mozilla are not necessarily eliminated, provided they are not tied to ensuring default status. This nuanced distinction is crucial. For months, legal analysts and industry observers have noted the possibility that the remedies phase might not result in a complete overhaul of Google's business model. The government's initial push included a demand for Google to divest its Chrome browser, a move that was ultimately rejected by the judge. The judge recognized that while Google's default placement deals were central to its search monopoly, the payments themselves were not inherently illegal. The ruling essentially allows these payments to continue as long as they don't explicitly guarantee Google's position as the default search engine. This ruling is a massive relief for Apple, whose lucrative annual payments from Google, estimated to be in the tens of billions of dollars, are vital for its services division. Similarly, for Mozilla, the maker of the Firefox browser, these payments from Google have been a lifeline, potentially preventing the company's decline. The judge's acknowledgement of this reality means that these critical revenue streams can persist, albeit with adjustments to contract terms. Google, while facing the end of its exclusive default deals and the requirement to share some search data with rivals, avoids the catastrophic outcome of losing its browser. The government's attempt to target Chrome was seen by many, including this analysis, as a misstep. Chrome is immensely valuable to Google, but its value proposition to other entities, particularly in the context of a forced sale, was questionable. The judge's decision reflects this reality, suggesting that breaking up Google's browser assets would not have effectively solved the antitrust concerns. The ruling also touches upon the emerging field of artificial intelligence. Google's attempts to integrate AI, like Gemini, into Chrome were noted, but the court seems to have concluded that AI is still too nascent and competitive for such broad regulatory intervention at this stage. The market forces, rather than government mandates, are seen as the primary drivers of disruption in the AI space, much like the historical trajectory of Microsoft. Ultimately, the disruption to Google search is likely to come from new technologies, such as AI chatbots, rather than directly from this antitrust case or its remedies. Google's own aggressive push into AI, evident in its product integrations, suggests the company recognizes this shift. If Google's efforts to leverage its search placement to gain dominance in AI prove successful, the judge may indeed revisit the situation. However, for now, the focus remains on how these new data sharing and distribution rules will play out in practice. This intricate legal outcome sets the stage for a new era of digital partnerships. But what exactly are the new rules of engagement for device makers and search providers? We'll break down the specific prohibitions and permissions before pivoting to the next critical legal decision impacting the digital advertising landscape. Exclusive deals barred, breakup avert. In a significant ruling that navigated the complexities of antitrust law, a federal judge has outlined the remedies for Google's illegal monopoly in online search, barring the company from using exclusive default search deals. While Google avoids a structural breakup, including the divestiture of its Chrome browser or Android operating system, the court mandates an end to exclusivity in distribution agreements and may require data sharing with competitors. This outcome represents a middle ground, addressing monopolistic practices without the most severe penalties. Reuters reports that U.S. District Court Judge Amit P. Mehta has prohibited Google from entering or maintaining exclusive agreements that link the distribution of its core services, Search, Chrome, Google Assistant, and the Gemini app, to other applications, licenses, or revenue-sharing arrangements. This means that phone manufacturers and other partners can no longer be contractually obligated to feature Google services exclusively as the default option. The ruling allows Google to continue paying for placement on devices and browsers, but crucially, these payments cannot be tied to exclusivity clauses that block rivals. The order also contemplates Google making certain search and search ad syndication services available to competitors at standard rates. Furthermore, it includes provisions for limited data sharing with qualified competitors, a move intended to help them improve their services' relevance and revenue potential. Google has expressed its intention to appeal the data sharing aspect of the decision, arguing that it could expose its trade secrets and business strategies. The judge, however, emphasized the need for data access to foster competition. In August 2024, Judge Mehta had already determined that Google operated as a monopolist and acted to maintain its monopoly in general search and related text advertising. Today's order focuses on the remedies for these practices, specifically targeting distribution channels and data access, rather than breaking up the company's core assets. This approach signifies a judicial preference for behavioral remedies over structural ones when deemed sufficient to address anti-competitive conduct. The ending of exclusivity in default placement deals will necessitate changes in how contracts are structured across devices and browsers. Manufacturers and carriers will need to revise their agreements to comply with the new regulations. While the ruling does not mandate specific user experience changes, such as mandatory choice screens for search engines, the eventual impact will depend on how new contracts are negotiated and approved by the court. The implementation is expected to be gradual, pending the final judgment. Looking ahead, Google faces a separate remedies trial in its ad tech case, which could lead to further changes in its advertising and measurement practices. The timeline for these remedies to take effect is contingent on the parties submitting a revised judgment by September 10, with a potential start date about 60 days later, unless Google secures temporary relief during an appeal. The scope of data sharing, if it proceeds as outlined, could significantly impact competition over the 6-year period the remedies are set to run, depending on the specificity and breadth of the data provided. These rulings create a new dynamic for tech giants and their partners, but how will this legal precedent influence the broader competitive landscape, especially concerning emerging technologies? We'll now recap all the day's top stories and give you all the ways to stay connected with us. And that's a wrap on today's essential updates. We saw a federal judge rule against breaking up Google's Chrome browser in a major antitrust case, while still imposing new rules for competition. We also learned that Google avoids a breakup, but must end exclusive default search deals, potentially sharing more data with rivals. Plus, we've seen how crucial partnerships between tech giants like Apple and Mozilla were preserved through nuanced legal remedies. Finally, the digital advertising world is bracing for potential changes following a separate antitrust case targeting Google's ad tech business. Don't miss out on the next big story. Hit that like button if you found this episode valuable, subscribe to Google Trends Hub for your daily dose of essential news, and ring that notification bell so you're always the first to know. Connect with us on all our social media platforms for more exclusive content and discussions. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.